Hey, it's Carrie.
And Ashley.
We welcome you to the Self-Care Cafe. We are both health professionals and moms and nature lovers and food lovers and love helping women get over dieting and just start living. We think that talking about bodies and perfect bodies and dieting is just boring.
Did we put you to sleep there, Carrie?
Yes. So if you are ready to ditch dieting and get to living and talk about more important things, then you are in the right place. We don't put shame and guilt on the menu here. You don't even have to tip us.
Nope.
Come hang with us. The advice is free. We want to have a bunch of girlfriends to just hang out with and get real with, and it's time to start living, ladies. Hi, Ashley.
Hey, Carrie.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. So what's on the menu for today?
Well, I think that one really cool topic that I've been seeing a lot about lately on social media, especially, would be the difference between what a meal plan is versus what meal planning is.
Right.
Because they sound so similar, but
They do.
they're so different, right?
Right. For one thing, a meal plan is a noun.
Right.
That's where we were discussing this before. Like, okay, how can we? Because it is confusing. So a meal plan is a noun, but meal planning is a verb. Like it's what you do.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So I think of a meal plan as like something that you've gotten from somewhere else, whether that's something that you've purchased or something that someone else has created for you. It's kind of like probably the same for everyone. So like if you got it from, I don't know, an online trainer or an online nutrition person or something like that, it's probably going to be the same for everyone else that has been purchasing the same thing. So it's kind of
Yeah,
like,
you can sometimes you can do a Google search. Some magazines do meal plans.
yeah,
They might do it according to a certain number of calories or a low carb meal plan, uh, a certain eating style meal plan.
yeah, like a Mediterranean style or
Yeah, yep. Or here's a keto meal plan, or it's low fat meal plan. It's and usually that there's some calorie level attached to it.
right.
Uh, but they're pretty cookie cutter because other than just giving you a specific calorie number or a type like you said, Mediterranean or keto or low carb, they're still pretty cookie cutter. Like they're not taking anyone's true food preferences, allergies, anything like that into account, right?
Right. And definitely not health conditions unless it's related to like if it's a low fat meal plan, maybe that's taking into consideration like heart disease. But if you have heart disease and like diabetes, for example, that's not going to be something that's necessarily 100% useful for you.
Right. So it's not personalized, even though some of them might say or make it sound like it's personalized to you, unless they are specifically interviewing you and getting your preferences and your medical conditions and all that. It really isn't.
Right. And I was just thinking too, like, who is putting out these meal plans that we see all over the place? Like you said, Carrie, maybe sometimes magazines or maybe just random people out on the internet or, like nutrition influencers, maybe, personal trainers, maybe, somebody that might not necessarily be really credentialed or an expert in nutrition might be putting them out.
Mhm.
So that's
Right.
also another thing to kind of be careful
And,
about.
and even if they are credentialed, if they are registered
Yep.
dietitians, it's still not personalized to any one person in specific,
Right.
specific. Um, so that's pretty much what a meal plan is, right?
Right. And then one other thing I was just going to say too, like if you're in a registered dietitian's office and you create a meal plan with them, that's a little bit different. That's more like meal planning. Um, even
Right.
though they've created it, they've taking into account your history, your preferences, all the things that we were just talking about,
Right.
because you're sitting there with them, helping them do it.
Right. Right. And another thing that meal plans tend to that you'll find out on the internet is they'll tell you your portion sizes.
Oh, yeah. And
Right.
whether it's just portion sizes, like in tablespoons, cups,
Mm.
whatever, there's also ones that have you like weigh things out. Um, like how many ounces of meat is this, or, things like that.
Right. So would you say essentially that, any meal plan that you just search for out on the internet, is it essentially a diet?
I think that that's probably a great way to put that. So, yeah, it's kinda like a diet in disguise, right? Because it doesn't take into account anything about you.
Right.
And a lot of times too, when I see a lot of, like, meal prepping or, like, batch cooking,
Mhm,
um, there's that whole, kind of audience out there that does, all of their cooking on, like, Sundays, for example.
mhm.
And they just cook like pounds and pounds or whatever of, I don't know, this is a great example, like chicken breasts and brown rice and broccoli, and they just, measure it out and put it into containers, and like that's all they eat all week. And they just grab a container for the day, but it's the same thing.
Right.
So that meal prepping or batch cooking, um, and there's different ways we could go about doing that, but I see
Mhm.
that a lot, like,
For some people, at some level of doing that is helpful.
right.
Um, but I guess the question is, do you want to eat the same thing all week? Like that.
I
Like I
definitely don't.
So what I do like to do, like as far as what I've found is helpful, is because sometimes I'm like, "Ugh, I have to chop so many vegetables." Like
Mhm.
so what I do like to do, so if I'm making something like you did post recently with potatoes. So
Yep.
you cooked extra potatoes
Mhm.
um for what, because you were making one meal, but you knew like the next day or in a couple days you might make something else with potatoes. So you made extra. And I like doing that. So if I'm already chopping vegetables for one meal or recipe, I'll just do a bunch of extra so that then I can just grab them. So I find that I eat more vegetables that way,
Mhm.
if they're already chopped versus if I'm like in a rush, I'm like, ugh, I don't feel like doing that.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
feel like, yeah, that's definitely like a great shortcut, right? So there's a difference between like following these cookie cutter meal plans that, have broccoli every single day of the week or whatever, versus you just making your life easier, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And just try, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
definitely more diety to follow that meal plan because
Mhm.
maybe you didn't pick broccoli as the vegetable, right? If it's already written down for you.
And truth be
Um,
told, I wouldn't.
I know. I was just thinking that Carrie. I was like, Carrie wouldn't eat broccoli anyways.
I mean, I'll eat the tops of it, but it's not my favorite. It's
Yep.
not my favorite vegetable.
Yep. And
Um,
and so that's the other piece, right? Like a meal plan, who knows besides you, like what sounds good to you that day or how much you're going to need to fill up and be satisfied even from different meals, different days.
mhm,
Except for you, like
right,
nobody that's creating this meal plan with specified portions and everything can know that.
right, right. And so I have a question for you,
Sure.
and you didn't know I was gonna ask you this, it just came to my mind. Is it true that sometimes when we're craving a certain food, it's our body's way of saying, "Hey, I need those nutrients," or is that true, or is that kind of, eh?
I feel like it could go both ways. Like, I bet sometimes it's true. Like, so a couple nights ago, I made stir fry, and I know I hadn't had very many vegetables the days before that, and I definitely needed some, and it sounded really good to me. So I feel like yes, to an extent, it's probably true, but also there's so many other things that come into play when we're deciding on what sounds good, like our emotional state. Maybe we smelled something, like food wise that sounded really good after we smelled it. Like if you're at a restaurant and you're trying to pick something and somebody's food walks by with the server, right? Like, if it smelled really good, especially like those nice greasy French fries, um, they tend to sway your choice a little bit, right?
Right, right. And sometimes it's also like the mouth feel or
Yep.
like sometimes I want something crunchy.
Yep.
Sometimes I want something that's more like pudding or,
Mhm.
like it so that plays a role too. Because I know certain people like I have a friend, she cannot eat bananas. There's just something about the texture that, she just cannot eat bananas. So, but it can go the other way too. Like sometimes it's just like you want that feeling in your mouth. It
Right.
sounds kind of weird, but
Nope. I get you.
but yeah, so okay, so I think we've got it down on what a meal plan is, but now what is meal planning?
Well, like you said earlier, meal planning is more like a verb, like it's something that we're actively doing. So, and there's so much flexibility to it. And I think that's where we really like it because of that flexibility. It's not as diety as like purchasing a completed meal plan for you because you're the one in charge. You can do it as flexibly and loose as you like, or you can plan every single meal and snack for the most part. Even if it still works for you, like, but you can also be flexible with whether or not you choose to stick to it. And you can
Right.
do that with the meal plan also. But I feel like when you're purchasing a meal plan, you go into it with that diet mindset. Like, I have to stick to this because probably you're trying to accomplish something by doing it, right? Like maybe you're trying to lose weight, or maybe you're trying to, I don't know, manage a health condition, or there's some purpose usually why we're trying to follow a meal plan. Another reason might be you're just sick of trying to decide what to eat all the time.
Just tell me what to eat.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
If I had $1 for every client that told me that, I'd be a rich woman. Um,
And I feel like we turn to that because nutrition has got so confusing, right?
yes.
People just
Yep.
want to know what to do because is this food, whatever it is, good or bad? And should I include it or not? People are sick of trying to figure it out.
Mhm. Yeah, but so and this is the way I look at it, like, this is my body, so it's really my responsibility to figure out what works for my body. It's not it's not your responsibility to tell me what I should be eating, um, because I'm the one in my body. I know what it feels like after I eat certain foods,
Yeah.
and so that's each of our own responsibility to sort of figure that out and totally get like just tell me what to eat. I totally get that mindset because it is confusing and it's overwhelming. I mean, you go to the grocery store, oh my gosh, how many different options do you have with different foods? Um but again, it's like kind of keeping track, thinking about how, well, oh, my belly's not feeling good, or I'm really gassy, or I'm bloated. Well, what have I had to eat? And start connecting the dots to the different foods, and what foods give you the energy that you're looking for. What foods, if you have problems with your blood sugar, what, even if it's not like a official medical diagnosis, if you find that you get that hangry feeling and get really irritable, maybe lightheaded and shaky, that's probably blood sugar. Like what are you eating to experience that,
Yeah. I,
right?
I really like how you said that because, like you said, it's your responsibility to figure that out. But I feel like a lot of people don't necessarily think like that.
Mm,
A lot of people feel like they quote unquote should be eating a certain way because that is what is quote unquote supposed to what they're supposed to be doing to be the healthiest they can be, or a lot of times we put a lot of pressure on ourselves around nutrition, and if we're not eating quote unquote the healthiest we can, then we're failing at our nutrition. um right, that's kind of a whole other subject that we'll talk about a lot, but yeah, this whole idea of having responsibility over what you're eating and how it's affecting your body. And that's part of what intuitive eating is about, right? Like the flexibility and the time and room for being able to experiment and explore different foods and how they make you feel. Or another thing I talk about a lot is how different pairings of food or food groups can affect people and how they feel. Like um do you need carbs at every meal? Do you need all of the food groups at every meal? Like what makes you feel better? And obviously, what makes you feel better might not be achievable at every single meal and snack, but at least you have that information.
Right, right. And your body is your body. It's not like anyone else's. So like even what makes me feel good might not make Ashley feel good
Right.
or give you the energy that you need. Um yeah, I think that it so many times with our we just kind of try to hand that responsibility over to someone else, but really I just really feel like it's our each of our own responsibilities to um take care of our bodies and to figure our bodies out. Like be friends with your body.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
like when a friend comes over, oh, would you like would you like a slice of cake and
Right. Yeah, that's a
know
great point. Like
and
if you have guests over, you're not just like, here's what it is, like just
yeah,
this
here's
is
what
it.
I have, eat it.
Right.
Because
You
I said
ask
you should.
yeah, you have the kindness and the forethought to ask them what they want. And I find myself asking myself that all the time. And I think that a lot of people don't necessarily do that. Like we were saying, like people are probably just eating things because they feel like they should be eating them.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And one other thing too about going with like the meal plan versus the meal planning is it takes away that decision making too. Like
Yeah.
if we're burnt out with food,
Mhm.
it can be helpful. But again, it kind of is the opposite, right? So if we're trying to accomplish something with our bodies and our health and our nutrition, the meal plan kind of sets us back because then we're just following this kind of diety thing again, and we're not learning anything necessarily about our food. We're just following this plan blindly.
Right,
And I feel like it's setting us back because if we used that time that we're following it by and like tried to figure out, well, what actually works for my body, you're going to be 10 steps ahead instead of the 5 or 6 behind or whatever it might be.
right. And it does get easier over time, even though our bodies are always changing and maybe some foods that you were able to enjoy previously, maybe something's changed in your body and now it's like, not sure that that's, or sometimes ingredients in foods too, if it's a prepackaged food, sometimes they change ingredients. I found that with like face cream. um, but yeah, and the thing with meal planning too that I like is if you plan like and it doesn't have to be like your whole week ahead or anything like that, but at least a couple of days in advance, you start planning out. There are fewer trips to the grocery store.
Yeah, so it's
Right?
totally saving us money too, right? So I guess um the verb meal planning, like when we're creating our own meal plan, it saves us a lot of things. It saves us money, like Carrie just talked about. It's saving us time because we're not, you know what my least favorite question in the world is?
What?
What's for dinner?
Yes.
Oh, it drives me
Agreed.
nuts.
Agreed.
So it saves us time and energy because we already sort of have an idea and we can change our minds, but we don't have to take that extra time every single day to figure it out. We've already put in that like planning part, that proactive part of the meal plan for the week.
Yeah, and if you have kids, it could be like make it a fun activity. Sit down with them Sunday or something. Like, okay, what are all the meals we want to do this week? And when kids get involved like that too, they're also more likely to eat it.
Yeah.
Um, if you can get them to help, cook it and prepare it, even more so. But that way also they have a say and they're getting also what they want, right? Like we kind of shove the plate in front of their face and expect them to just eat it, but we adults don't like every single food. Um, so getting, if you can get the kids involved and help with the meal planning, that can help too. And maybe they will be more likely to eat it also, get them helping with prepping and cooking it as well. But that way everyone is involved in it and it also gets them in the habit as they get older and go on to adulthood. They are already in that habit, so I think it's a good habit to sort of get into, right? And like Ashley and I've already said, it saves time. You're not running to the grocery store. I know in our area, like we've got the little store in town, but the prices tend to be higher. But I'm not going to go all the way to the next town if I just need one or two items because I forgot them or something,
Right.
So it just helps in that be a little bit more organized with it. And I think you said too, Ashley, it can also help you meet your health and nutrition goals
Yeah,
in a flexible way, not a rigid way.
exactly. And I want to just jump back to the creating good habits around meal planning for your kids because um it's super important, right? And especially i- it will bring up conversations about food and nutrition and their bodies. And that is such a great conversation to be able to have with them on a daily, weekly, whatever basis. Because you can cement the messaging about listening to their bodies and about like, how did this food make you feel if they say, oh, I don't want pizza this week because last week it didn't make me feel good, or, something like that, depending on, the maturity of your kids and their age,
Right.
probably about their experiences with it. But it's such a great way to talk with them about this stuff.
Yeah. And maybe it also can help them connect like when they're eat too much of something. I can remember one of my
Mhm.
kids, his eyes were bigger than his belly, and I think he ate like two Boston cream donuts at once, and then he threw up, proceeded to throw up, right? It's like, oh, I guess but sometimes, was I tempted to say, maybe, but it's not, I don't think it's a bad thing to say, why don't you wait a bit and see if your belly's full after the first one, which is maybe what I should have said, but it was also a lesson to him, like, oh, maybe two Boston cream donuts
Right.
is too.
And sometimes we have to learn our own lessons for them to really
Yes,
sink in, right?
absolutely.
Us as adults still do that. I mean, maybe not to the point of actually throwing up, but especially when we're out at a restaurant, maybe like that almost scarcity food mindset, like I'm not going to be able to have this meal again for a while. So we tend to maybe overdo it and get to that uncomfortable fullness. Like that is part of it. Like
Mhm.
we probably know that it's a little bit too much for our bellies, but we're really enjoying it. And it's a really fun experience with people or, whatever the situation is. But we know too.
Yeah, so yeah, hard to get angry with a child because
Yep,
we adults still do it as well. But that's also part of the intuitive eating
it is.
is just knowing, not just like by looking at a plate of food, like, oh, this is too much food, but how does it feel in your body, like as you're eating, um, and what noticing those what cues are like, oh, I'm feeling full, but also knowing like, okay, if I just eat lettuce for a meal, I might feel full at some point, but I'm going to be hungry again in 30 minutes.
Exactly.
um, so it's just it's all this learning curve, but we always go on little tangents.
Yeah. So we started talking about how to help meet like health nutrition goals with meal planning in a more flexible way than like relying on that meal plan that someone else created for you. And I love talking about this because you can have health and nutrition goals,
Mhm,
right? Like if you're trying to control blood sugar or if you have food allergies, this could be
mhm,
a really great way to make sure that you're avoiding them.
mhm.
Or if you're working on your blood pressure, or if you just want to learn what foods are giving you more energy, and you want to include those more, making a meal plan can yourself, right? Making a meal plan. And this is where it gets confusing
This is where
because
we
the a meal plan that you got from somebody else, but the
right.
meal planning act, like we're talking about now, they're so confusing. We need to come up with like a better,
We need a different name.
yeah, we do. What are some ideas? Let's see. Strategy, like a meal
Yeah.
strategy, maybe instead of a plan.
Meal calendar.
Meal calendar. Um, I don't know. I get so stuck on the word plan because it's just what everybody sort of knows when we talk about it.
Planning, strategizing,
Strategizing, that one's a good one.
meal strategizing, uh, or eating, I don't know.
I don't know. I like
It's
the Yeah, I like the word
if you have any
strategy.
ideas, if you're listening and you have any ideas on what else we could call meal planning,
Yeah,
please please let us know because, it is confusing. That's why we wanted to talk about it. Um, but I guess the main difference is the cookie cutter plan that you download from the internet that
mhm,
someone wrote versus you planning out yourself what meal your meals will be
right,
for the right?
right,
Or
and
not necessarily week, but a little in advance.
right, in advance, a day, 3 days, a week,
It's flexible. So
right,
if you go to the grocery store, it's like, oh, this pasta's on sale or this produce is on sale. You're like, oh, I could change your meal. Like it's all flexible. Um, and or maybe you go to the store, it's like, oh, the produce looks like garbage this week. Let's change this plan, this meal to whatever.
right,
Um, so the difference is, the one that you tailor for yourself versus the cookie cutter.
exactly. One other thing I was just thinking about was not only could it be something that you downloaded off the internet, but a healthcare provider could even give you one. And I feel like it's tricky because a lot of times I feel like the healthcare providers are giving it to you as more of like a guideline, not necessarily something to follow exactly. And depending on what it is for, like for
Mm,
bariatric surgery or weight loss surgery, there's definitely meal plans that you have to follow for their programs. But even like if you go to a doctor's office and they talk about like a low carb meal plan for your blood sugars, for example, um, that doesn't mean you have to follow that for 3 months or something.
right.
And I'm not sure if sometimes the providers understand that that's what's happening,
Hmm.
but
Sometimes I wonder if the providers even know what's really in the meal plan.
right, that's true too. And I hate to throw providers under the bus, but they don't get a lot of nutrition training. And we'll talk about this another time. I feel like that's a whole nother subject.
Yeah, that's why we have registered dietitians.
Yes, and diabetes educators and all of the other awesome health professionals. It takes a team.
It does indeed. Awesome. I think we covered it.
I think so. I think that it's still confusing, kind of calling them the same thing. So I guess
Mhm.
for now we'll call it a meal plan versus like your meal strategy, right?
Yeah,
Because the
yeah,
strategy is like something that we're thinking up.
exactly. Exactly. But if you have any questions, or comments, if we've confused you more, we would love to hear from you. Ashley, where can our listeners find us?
Great question. So the podcast is available wherever you might listen to your podcast. Obviously, you're hearing us now, but on Spotify, and then we have a little website on Buzzsprout, which is a podcast platform, which is a great way to listen to. And then we're on social media. So we have an Instagram page. And so our Instagram, and the Instagram is linked in the show notes below, but it's Self-Care Cafe, all one word, _official. And we are on Facebook. And again, it's a Self-Care Cafe for a page name. We're also on Patreon under Self-Care Cafe. I think those are the biggest places.
Mhm. Yep, that's plenty.
Yep.
We're out there. Awesome. Well, this was a great conversation. Like I said, hopefully we didn't confuse you more. It is confusing, so if you are more still confused, don't feel bad.
Yeah.
And we will try to come up with a different word for meal planning. I think meal strategy
Yeah,
might
I
stick.
like that one. And we'll do another episode soon about like more how to on the meal planning.
Yes. Awesome.
Awesome. Well, so nice to chat with you today, Carrie.
You as well, my dear. Love you, latte.
Love you, latte.